In today's video, we have the latest trade talk from around the NHL. Today, we're looking at the Ottawa Senators and the latest in the Shea Pinto situation. We have trade rumors involving the Buffalo Sabres, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Boston Bruins. We have a waiver claim, including Foudy getting picked up on waivers. Looks like Flames defenseman Rasmus Andersson's facing a suspension, and a few other injury updates and call-ups around the NHL. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a fair bit of NHL news and some trade talk to take a look at today. First up, we had a claim on the NHL waiver wire this afternoon. The Columbus Blue Jackets have placed young centerman Foudy on waivers yesterday, and I had a feeling he'd get picked up. In yesterday's video, I talked about the idea that I thought he probably wouldn't clear, and that a team that I was looking to boost their center depth would probably give him a chance. And he's now a member of the Nashville Predators. I think there's probably 4 or 5 teams that I could have seen likely putting in a claim, and Nashville certainly makes sense here as well. Especially, I know Cody Glass got hurt recently. I'm not sure if he's going to be out for any length of time, but on top of the fact that they likely are looking to boost their depth at the position, plus dealing with an injury, certainly makes sense. Foudy's got lots of speed. Was a little bit more of a prolific point producer in junior than he has been in the NHL, but still trying to find his game on a consistent basis. Played a fair bit last year as the first kind of full season in the NHL. Obviously, Columbus took him in the first round a few years back, so he was very highly touted as a rook, as a prospect, and now it's kind of fallen off a little bit, but it's had some injuries, lack of opportunity. We'll see if a fresh start in Nashville can get him going. We'll see what happens, but he should do well and get a good opportunity there for sure. It looks like we might be getting a pretty good suspension for Rasmus Andersson of the Flames, which is certainly a little bit out of character for him. The Columbus-Calgary game last night got a little crazy at the end. With a matter of seconds left, I don't remember the exact seconds on the clock. It was, I think, I want to say maybe 10 or 8 seconds or something. I remember watching the game. It was almost over. And Rasmus Andersson really nailed Patrick Laine with an illegal hit, and he's being called to player safety for charging and elbowing. Now, he was given a proper penalty, a major penalty at the time, so that's going to be factored in. Laine is hurt. He's missing their next game, obviously, which is not good because they do factor in injury on plays like this before they decide. So ultimately, Andersson is going to be out of action for at least a few games. Now, it is a phone interview for this hearing, so it's going to be a maximum of 5 games. Andersson doesn't have a deep history of suspension, so I don't know that it's going to be a lot, but I do think it's definitely going to be more than one. It's a fact here that it was called charging and elbowing with obviously contact to the head. I honestly wouldn't be. I'm predicting it's going to be at least 2. It was completely unnecessary, completely uncalled for. The game was pretty much over. I know the Flames were getting a little frustrated. The Jackets won the game. Like I said, it's a little out of character for Andersson. I don't know. I'm shocked it happened, but I understand that. Sometimes tempers boil over, but you can't be doing stuff like that at the end of the day. I'm going to say it's at least 2 games, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's 3, given the severity of the multiple infractions here in the mix. So we'll find out as I record this video Saturday evening, just shy of 7 Eastern. Player safety has not made their announcement as of yet. We probably will get word on this later tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest, but I suspect sometime before the end of the evening, we'll probably know our updates on that. A few other injury updates. The Canucks are getting Ilya Mikheyev back tonight. He's finally been activated, ready to return. So that should be a good boost to their lineup. Obviously, he's been dealing with an injury for some time. Was hopeful to be ready for starting the season, but unfortunately was not. So he's finally ready to roll. So that's good news for them. The Coyotes and Ducks were playing today. That game's pretty much, I think, just finishing up here as I record this video. The Coyotes lost a couple of players that left the game due to injury. We'll have to see if they're going to be out for any length of time. But Zucker and Carcioni both left the game and did not return. So that's certainly not good news that they're looking for there. The Montreal Canadiens today got some good news on Christian Dvorak. Dvorak is inching closer to a return. He's now shedded the no-contact sweaters in a regular practice jersey. So that's good news. So I would suspect probably sometime in the next week he should be back if all goes well. They also had to recall UL Armia today, who they had put through waivers and had to sign to Laval. So we'll see if Armia gets a chance to play and what he can do to kind of try to stay in the NHL after not making the team out of training camp. And Dvorak, like I said, will be ready soon by the looks of things, which means that either Armia has to go back to the minors or another subsequent trade-off will have to happen to create the roster space for him. I do think there's a decent possibility Dvorak could be moved later in the season, but teams are going to want to see him return and play for a while before that happens. I would suspect that it'd be potential for a deadline deal, but not likely for some time. At least I wouldn't think. We'll have to wait and see, though, on that front. Some trade talk, and the Bruins trade talk I want to look at is not really a for sure thing. But Jake Debrusk is a healthy scratch today, which raised some eyebrows. Now, according to head coach Jim Montgomery, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for it, and I'm not going to doubt that he's being honest with us here. But what was told to the media was that Jake Debrusk is a healthy scratch for their game this evening due to the fact that he was late for a team meeting. Now, that makes total sense. Players are either late or miss meetings, or they're late for practice or anything of that nature. Typically, coaches do punish them, and they usually do end up missing time. Or they are benched for a period, or something happens. There's some sort of consequence, and for Debrusk, it's going to be missing tonight's game. Now, of course, the other part to this, though, is there's some people looking at his performance so far this year and saying, well, I wonder if he was performing differently, if they'd handled it differently. He also has 0 points, no goals, no assists on the season so far. The Bruins are off to a good start so far. So it just makes you wonder. Now, he's also in the final year of his contract. We know there is interest for Debrusk to re-sign in Boston. We know there's interest on Boston's side to keep him around and do an extension. He's 27 years old, looking for a bigger, longer-term kind of payday cash-in type of scenario after having a couple of productive years with the Bruins after playing through what a lot of people knew about publicly, that he had made a request for a trade. This was pre-Montgomery time. This is during the Bruce Cassidy era of the Bruins. But after the coaching change, he decided that he would be rescind that request and give it a chance under the new coach before continuing on. And obviously at this point we have no reason to think that he wants out, because really the things have gone well for him for the most part, except that things are starting slowly for him this year. That doesn't mean he wants out, though, because he's not playing well. I just wonder at this point if the team, like I said, sometimes depending on a player's performance, I do think that there might be different performance types of punishments based on things of this nature. I don't know. The Bruins clearly don't have a ton of experience and depth in the forward group like they used to, given what they've lost. They're still playing really well. The guys they have are doing good, so they're not going to tinker too much with a successful formula. But at the same time, I just wonder, with the performance in the meeting, I don't think it's going to necessarily lead to a trade. I just do wonder about the long-term future of Jake Debrusk in Boston, and we'll see where that goes. In Buffalo, there's still talk that Victor Olofsson is very much likely going to be dealt at some point during the season, and it's quite likely that they move a goalie as well. But it's going to be a little while before that happens. In the case of Victor Olofsson, essentially, Jack Quinn hasn't returned yet. Now Zach Benson is day-to-day. So he's going to be, continuously in the lineup right now. He's projected to be on the third line. So they kind of need him for the time being. But if they get to a point in the next month or two where everybody's healthy, he could become an odd man out, and we could be more likely to see an Olofsson trade then. I don't think, if the Sabres are doing well enough to get into the playoffs, that they're going to be a team that's going to want to shed at the deadline. So if it doesn't happen before then, I would think they'd take their chances with him as like their own rental type of thing, because he is a pending unrestricted free agent. And based on the amount of young talent that's made the Sabres roster and has found spots, it's unlikely that he returns to Buffalo next year. Regardless of what you want to say about Olofsson, this is definitely his last season. Either he's traded or he walks as a UFA. That we can probably all agree on and say is fair for sure. But unless they run into multiple injury scenario where they really can't afford to lose him, then he will be moved eventually once they get a couple of the other guys healthy. That's kind of what's holding up an Olofsson trade. Like I said, he and his agent both fully expected him to be moved in the offseason, but the deal never materialized. So we'll see. He's still expected to move a goalie at some point. Levi's had a slow start to the season, so I think they're going to wait this before they do that, because if they decide that Devin Levi really could benefit from some time in the minors, they can put him in the minors without needing waivers. They can run with Comrie and UPL as their goalie tandem for a while, see how that works out. So they wouldn't need to trade a goalie. But if Devin Levi gets on a good streak and they decide that he's definitely going to stick in the NHL all season, then it's not fair to UPL and Comrie to keep them both on the roster and not hardly get any playing time. One of them will back up, one of them will be a scratch on majority of the evenings. But are they really going to be able to play Devin Levi 60 plus games this year? I wouldn't think that's possible. I mean, at this rate, the goalie has had a good start to his NHL career last year at a small sample size. He's had an iffy start to the campaign this year as a rookie. I still believe in him 100%. Think long term he's their guy, but I do wonder if they'll consider it. They'll probably give him a few more games here before they go too far with this. But I think in the short term they got to decide if maybe it's just a little too much for him, if they need to take a step back and let him develop in the minors for a little while before they make another go at this. If they do, are they comfortable with UPL and Comrie being their NHL tandem? I do wonder if they decide Levi needs more time, if not only would it, you can make an argument it prevents a goalie trade because then they don't need to move somebody, or do they want to move one of the guys they have to bring in somebody that's more established to try to make more of a push for playoffs? I mean, that's the thing, right? Is they're going to have to decide if they wait too long into the season and things aren't going well, then playoffs may not be an option. Because like I said before, you can't win the cup in October, November, but if you have a horrible start and you're too far behind by the time you get to even middle of November, it's almost impossible to get caught up. If you're even 4 to 6 points out of a playoff spot at the middle of November, is extremely challenging to close the gap on. Not impossible. It can happen. Look at the Blues in 2019. They did it, but it's rare. So we'll see where the Sabres go, but they're going to definitely be a team to watch here in the short term. In Vancouver, we know about Connor Garland. And his agent having permission in a trade is something that they're really hoping to get done soon. According to Frank Saravalli, what's really holding up the Connor Garland deal is the term on the contract. He still has multiple years left. He said if Garland was in the final year of his deal, then this would be an easy one. He's not. He's got 3 years left. So at the end of the day, teams are looking and saying, okay, even if you retain a little bit of money for us, that's still going to take up a cap hit on our books for 3 seasons. That's not really something that we're willing to do. Even if you include a sweetener, let's say they throw in, well, here's Connor Garland in a second round pick. They're looking at it going, well, it's still tying up a lot of money for multiple seasons. A second round pick's not enough. We need you to take a contract. So at the end of the day, if Vancouver wants to shed money here, they need to be able to obviously come ahead in this transaction. So Garland moves, they're willing to take a player back, preferably a defenseman, but they still want to come ahead on the cap space by at least $1 million. So that is going to prove challenging. But like I said before, a team like Nashville, Nashville might want to hold off because of some injuries, but a Dante Fabro, that might suffice for them. I've heard Tyson Barrie's name mentioned. I don't think he would be the one to go. I think Fabro would be the preferred candidate there. And then there's other teams like Winnipeg. I know if Winnipeg were to trade a defenseman, their first choice would probably be Nate Schmidt. I don't know that the Canucks are going to have interest to bring Schmidt back to Vancouver, though. That's not going to work. That's too much of a contract, too. So I don't know how that's going to work with Winnipeg, but there's a lot of people that think that with the Jets having the injury to Gabe Vilardi now, that their interest would probably be reignited because they were apparently one of the teams in the mix before, and that does make sense. I just don't know that it would be a case of them sending a defenseman to Vancouver. At this rate, unless they have to be a different defenseman, I don't know that they'd want to move a Logan Stanley or something, but that might be the type of player that maybe Vancouver asked for, but I'm not really sure he's the ideal guy that they would want anyway. So it's hard to imagine exactly, but the term on Garland's trade or contract is what's holding up the trade. And unless they're willing to get to a point here that they take a contract back. Now, it might be less term, but if they get out of a contract with those number of years on Garland and they can take a shorter term for 1 or 2 years that the team they're trading with is considers unfavorable, then that's going to be more likely to have get a deal done. So we'll see. But the Canucks are working hard to get that done. And in Ottawa, there's an update from Bruce Garriock today. Obviously, the Senators played the Red Wings this afternoon, and they always have the question period and second intermission with Bruce Garriock. And he says, similar to what Elliot Friedman has said, except he added more to it, because Elliot has said that he expects a resolution on the Pinto situation in the next few days. Well, Bruce said the same sort of thing, except what he said was that he expects there to be a resolution on the Shane Pinto situation between he and the Senators in the next few days as well, but it's not necessarily going to be a contract extension. And that just took a lot of people by surprise, and everybody's like, what? Like, there's no way you're going to trade Pinto. Like, that was absolutely insane. You're the one who put yourself in this cap situation because you overspent on free agents. You didn't look after your RFA centerman who's in his early 20s and already has a 20-goal season, who you really, in my opinion, need on your roster. Why would you be dumb enough to move him? Like, unless you're getting something like in return that you just can't say no to, I don't understand why you would do that. Dominik Kubalik has become the preferred trading roster member here by the fan base, at the very least. He's got 1 year left at $2.5 million. He's the guy that came over from the Debrusk trade. 5 games into the season, he's got goose eggs across the board. Yes, he's played more so on a productive line with Larkin, like when he's on a top 6 role, he can produce more, but Ottawa's not going to put Kubalik in a top 6 role. They have about more than 6, probably 7 or 8 forwards who would play ahead of him in those spots. So he's going to be a third line player with them. That's going to cause him to, not get as many looks. Now, lately, in the last game or two, he's been playing more with Norris and Batherson now that Norris is back. So your third line's not really a traditional third line. Like, if in a sense, it's more like a second line, but it's still, at the end of the day here, he's not producing, even playing with some stronger players like them. So, you may not bring him back. He may not want to stay. We don't know. It's 1 year. Why wouldn't you move that $2.5 million and essentially give that to Pinto? You would think that would bring a resolution to everything and get a contract on the books, get Kubalik out, Pinto in, everybody's happy. Yes, Ridley Gregg is playing the role of the third center behind Stützle and Norris, and he's doing a fine job. But your team would be that much better with Pinto. You could easily move Ridley Gregg to the wing. I mean, to me, he's played well enough. Ridley's not going anywhere. It's like he's earned an NHL spot. Then that's fine. You can keep him there. But he can play in the third line as a winger with Pinto and a guy like Matthew Joseph, and that's a heck of a third line. That line gives you smarts, speeds, good two-way play. That has a mix of everything. That would be a really, really solid third line. If you trade Pinto, I think you're a little bit crazy. I like to see them, because of their own cap mismanagement. Like, you think all these things were behind the Senators. Now that you have new ownership and a guy like Steve Staios over top of Pierre Dorion, you can't imagine they would do something stupid like that, right? You wouldn't think. But at the same time, are they just using this as a negotiating tactic? Because we know Pierre Dorion and his methods. He's given Bruce Garriock a lot of info over the years to negotiate through the media, even though he's the first one to tell you when you ask him about contracts that he doesn't negotiate through the media. Yeah, he does. He does it a lot. And Bruce is his puppet. So to me, maybe they're making it sound more so like we're going to trade him, and to kind of try to get them to cave a little bit on their demands and come in and say, okay, we'll sign for this, if he really wants to be there. Because we have not heard from anybody. Friedman has made a point of mentioning it every time he's brought it up, that Pinto does not want to trade. He wants to get this resolved. So if Pinto wants to be there, why in the heck wouldn't you want him to be there? So to me, this feels like more like a negotiating ploy than it does, something that they're really going to do. Unless they're playing chicken with them here, and maybe they will do it if they feel like they need to. Are they overconfident that Ridley Gregg's filling in nicely? It's 5 games. That's, he played a handful of games at the end of last year, but Pinto is, long-term, could Gregg be as good as Pinto? Maybe. We don't know that yet. We've seen more of Pinto. Pinto's already lost a season 2 years back because of a shoulder injury. He's not going to want to lose another one here, having this drag out and sort itself out too long. Like, this is beyond ridiculous. You gave Vladimir Tarasenko $5 million after taking in Kubalik at 2.5 in the trade for DeBrincat. You essentially, you really couldn't have done that. You either needed to flip Kubalik. I mean, at this point, Tarasenko at $5 million looks like he's probably worth it if he keeps playing the way he has. Obviously, maybe we'll feel differently in a few months, but right now, after 5 games, Tarasenko's looks like he's worth the $5 million. Dominic Kubalik, on the other hand, not that he's not a good player, it's just the role they can give him and how he fits on this roster. To me, he's not a $2.5 million player. So it makes more sense. Like, I don't know. The choice is obvious right there. I don't understand why this is dragging on so long. I know we've heard about Joseph trade. Joseph has played well. I think they would be kicking themselves and regretting trading Joseph. If that turns out to be what they do, they'd get more flexibility because he's making a little bit more than Kubalik right now. But you get him signed longer term. He fits well with that speed on that third line. He's well integrated with the team. He's been there a little bit longer. Has lots of good in the room. Good, lots of friendships. Kubalik's newer to the team, not fitting in well. There's a simple solution here. I would just hope that you don't see the dark days of the Sens start to kind of come back to haunt them because of a dumb decision by trading a young centerman when Pierre Dorion should know better than this. So we'll see. We will see. Either way, there should be a resolution soon. If they do trade him, they better get a darn good return, or the fan base is going to turn on Pierre pretty quickly. And in all honesty, for a GM who's kind of auditioning to a new owner and try to keep his job, I wouldn't think letting this play out and have this turn into a situation where you lose him is going to go over well. So we'll see where this goes, but either way, I hope it's resolved soon because it's dragging on way too long. Let me know your thoughts on today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.